Before we get into today's story, let's take a moment to thank our sponsor, AKS Engineering. With over 10 years of combined experience, AKS Engineering offers comprehensive architectural solutions across Ontario. From building permit drawings and 3D modeling to concept designs and render shots, their team is dedicated to turning your residential or commercial vision into reality, blending functionality with aesthetic appeal. So, if you're planning a new project or need expert guidance, AKS Engineering is here to bring your ideas to life. Thank you, AKS Engineering, for sponsoring today's video.
My name is Ethan Hayes, and I never thought a bottle of whiskey could turn my life into a nightmare. It all started on a cold, rainy night when I stumbled upon an old whiskey shop, Cain's Spirits, on a forgotten corner of the city. Inside, the air was thick with the scent of oak and aged liquor, and rows of dusty bottles lined the dimly lit shelves. An old man with sunken eyes stood behind the counter, his smile unsettling. Looking for something special, he asked, his voice dry and raspy. My eyes were drawn to a bottle on the top shelf. It was thick, almost black, with a faded label that read, "The Devil's Share." "What's that one?" I asked. The old man's smile faltered. "That's a rare one. Legend says it's cursed. Those who drink it see things better left unseen." I laughed it off and bought the bottle anyway, dismissing his warning to never finish it. Back home, I poured myself a glass. The whiskey was unlike anything I'd ever tasted, smooth, with a dark, smoky edge. As I drank, a strange warmth spread through me, but soon the shadows in my apartment began to flicker and stretch. I blinked, convinced it was just the alcohol, but the room warped and the walls seemed to pulse like they were alive. Figures emerged from the darkness, pale, hollow-eyed faces whispering in a language I couldn't understand. I dropped the glass, but they didn't disappear. They moved closer, their fingers reaching for me. I splashed water on my face, but the reflection in the mirror wasn't mine, it was the old man from the shop, his eyes empty black voids. Panicking, I tried to get rid of the bottle. I poured the whiskey down the drain, but no matter what I did, it always reappeared, full as ever. The figures haunted me day and night, their whispers growing louder, echoing even in the daylight. Sleep became impossible. Every time I closed my eyes, they were there, watching. I couldn't resist the urge to drink. Last night, I poured one final glass, hoping to end the torment. As the liquid passed my lips, the figures reappeared, screaming instead of whispering. The room spun, walls bled, and my vision darkened. Now, as I write this, I feel them closing in. The bottle is empty, and I know I've made a grave mistake. The old man's warning echoes in my mind, too late to save me. My name is Ethan Hayes, and I know tonight will be my last. The devil's share has claimed me. If you ever see that cursed bottle, do yourself a favor, leave it on the shelf. And whatever you do, never finish the bottle.
My name is Rachel, and I used to love my nightly walks. The quiet streets and cool breeze helped clear my mind. But that changed last month, on a night I'll never forget. I was walking down my usual route when I noticed a street light flickering up ahead. It was odd. This particular lamp always seemed to have issues, constantly blinking like it was trying to communicate. That night, though, it was worse. The light would go out entirely, plunging the street into darkness, only to flash back on moments later. I quickened my pace, feeling an unexplainable sense of dread. As I passed under the faulty light, it buzzed louder, almost like a warning. The darkness felt oppressive, and when the light flickered on again, I saw it, a shadowy figure at the edge of the illuminated circle, just outside of the light's reach. It didn't move, just stood there, as if waiting for something. I told myself it was just my imagination, a trick of the flickering light, but my gut told me to keep walking. As I hurried away, the next street light went out. Then the next. One by one, the lights blinked off in a sequence, chasing me down the street. My heart pounded in my chest as I broke into a sprint, trying to outrun the darkness that seemed to be creeping up on me. I stopped under the last functioning streetlight on the block, panting and looking back. The figure was closer now, standing right at the edge of the darkness, just outside the light's reach. It was tall and thin, its form shifting like smoke, features indistinguishable. I fumbled for my phone, desperate to call someone, anyone, but the screen was dead, just like the lights. The figure stepped closer, just a hair's breadth away from the light's boundary. The street light buzzed again, louder this time, and I realized it wasn't just flickering, it was struggling, like it was fighting against whatever was out there. I could see the darkness shifting, almost alive, writhing and pulsing like a living thing. I backed up, but the streetlights started to dim, the buzzing growing more frantic. The figure edged closer, its shape more defined now, long limbs, a head that seemed to tilt in curiosity or malice. I reached the edge of the light, and the buzzing stopped. The streetlight went out. I froze, swallowed by the darkness. I couldn't see anything, but I could feel it. Cold, empty, like the air had been sucked out of the space around me. I stumbled forward, trying to find the light again, but there was nothing. Just the darkness and the quiet, and the sound of footsteps that weren't mine. I never made it home that night. They found my phone and my keys, but I was gone, lost somewhere in that stretch of street where the lights always flickered. They say the street lights are working fine now, but some nights, if you walk by, you might see one flicker and buzz. And if you do, don't stop. Don't look back, just keep walking. Because something is out there, waiting in the dark.
My name is Alex, and I've always been a gamer, spending hours lost in virtual worlds. But last week, I found an online game I wish I'd never played, a game called Eclipse. I discovered it on a forum, through a sketchy link. The post promised an experience that transcends reality, and my curiosity got the better of me. I downloaded it, ignoring all the warning signs, unverified sources, no reviews. The game opened with a simple black screen, "Welcome to Eclipse." Press start. I hit start, and my screen flickered, loading a character creation screen that was eerily realistic. I created my character, but it looked exactly like me, down to the smallest detail. I felt uneasy, but brushed it off as advanced tech. The game world was a dark, sprawling city shrouded in perpetual night. The objective was simple: survive. No instructions, just a ticking clock in the corner of the screen. I started exploring empty streets and abandoned buildings. The silence was oppressive, no NPCs, no players, just me and shadows that shifted when I wasn't looking. Then, my screen glitched. For a split second, I saw my reflection in the game, but it was more than a reflection. My character was staring directly at me, eyes wide with terror. I blinked, and the game continued as if nothing had happened. I heard faint whispers through my headset, just on the edge of perception, growing louder the deeper I ventured into the city. They weren't just game sounds, they were real. I could hear my name, faint and distorted, mixed with static. I tried to exit, but the game wouldn't respond. My character started moving on its own, sprinting through the city as if being chased. I lost all control, the game was dragging me along. The screen went black, but the whispers didn't stop. The game loaded again, and I was in a room identical to mine, same desk, same walls. My character was at the computer, mirroring my every move. Then, the screen flickered, and a figure appeared behind my character, just out of reach. Its face was shrouded in darkness, but its eyes were cold and empty, staring directly at me. I whipped around, but my room was empty. When I looked back, the figure was closer, almost touching my character's shoulder. I tried to shut down my computer, but nothing worked. The whispers turned into frantic typing, filling my screen with the words, "You can't leave." The monitor went dark, and the room fell silent. I yanked the power cord, heart pounding. When I rebooted, Eclipse was gone, no files, no trace, like it never existed. But the whispers haven't stopped. Sometimes, I see flickers in my peripherals, and my reflection in screens lingers too long. If you ever see a game called Eclipse, don't download it. Because once you start, it never really ends.
My name is Clara, and last month I moved into a new apartment. It was nothing special, just a small space with creaky floors and dim lighting, but it was mine. The only thing missing was a sofa, so I started browsing online. That's when I found an ad for a local sofa maker named Joseph's Custom Sofas. The reviews were glowing, praising his craftsmanship and attention to detail. The prices were cheap, almost too good to be true, but I ignored the uneasy feeling in my gut and decided to order. I arrived at Joseph's workshop the next day. It was tucked away in an old industrial district, a place that looked forgotten by time. The shop was dimly lit, filled with the smell of sawdust and varnish. Fabrics of every color and texture hung from the walls, and half-finished sofas cluttered the floor. Joseph himself was a wiry man in his 60s with piercing blue eyes and hands that looked far too steady for his age. "Looking for something special?" he asked, his voice oddly warm. "I need a sofa," I said, glancing around. "Something unique." He smiled, showing too many teeth. "I have just the thing. Follow me." He led me to the back of the shop, where a beautiful vintage-looking sofa sat. Its deep blue fabric looked rich and inviting, and the woodwork was intricate, almost artistic. I ran my fingers along the armrest, admiring the craftsmanship. "It's perfect," I said. "How much?" Joseph gave me a price that seemed ridiculously low. I didn't question it. I just paid and arranged for delivery. The sofa arrived the next day. It fit perfectly in my living room, and I couldn't wait to relax on it. But as the days went by, I noticed strange things. At night, I'd hear soft creaks as if someone was shifting on the sofa. Once, I found deep indents in the cushions, like someone had been sitting there. I brushed it off as settling, convincing myself it was just my imagination. Then, the nightmare started. Every night, I'd dream of being trapped in a small, dark space, unable to move or breathe. The walls would close in, and I'd hear faint whispers, pleading and desperate. I'd wake up drenched in sweat, my heart racing, only to find the sofa looking as perfect as ever, as if mocking me. One evening, as I was cleaning, I noticed something odd under the sofa, a seam that didn't belong. I pulled at it, revealing a hidden compartment. Inside, I found something that made my blood run cold, an old, faded photo of a young woman sitting on the exact same sofa, looking eerily like me. Her eyes were hollow, and her expression was one of sheer terror. I confronted Joseph the next day, but his shop was gone, completely cleared out, like it had never existed. I called the number from the ad, but it was disconnected. Panicking, I researched more about his business and stumbled upon a forum thread about missing people, all linked to Joseph's Custom Sofas. The thread claimed Joseph was a collector, not of antiques, but of souls. He would craft his sofas using cursed materials, trapping the spirits of his victims inside. Terrified, I rushed home to get rid of the sofa, but it was too late. The whispers were louder now, and the indents on the cushions deeper. I tried to drag it to the curb, but the fabric seemed to cling to my hands, and the whispers turned into screams. Now I can't sleep. I can't escape the feeling that someone is watching me, waiting. I've moved the sofa to the basement, but I can still hear it creak at night, the faint sound of desperate souls trying to break free. My name is Clara, and if you ever come across a sofa that seems too perfect, too inviting, don't sit on it. Don't bring it into your home. Because once you do, it might never let you go.
My name is Sam, and I never imagined a simple childhood game could turn into a nightmare. It all began when I found an old board game in my grandparents' attic called Donkey Flight. The box was dusty, and the cover featured a cartoonish donkey with wings soaring through a bright, whimsical sky. The instructions were faded, but it promised a fun adventure for up to 4 players. Curious, I decided to play it with my friends, Mark, Lucy, and Jenna. We gathered in my living room one evening, spread the game board out on the floor, and read the instructions. The rules seemed harmless. Roll the dice, move your piece, and follow the quirky challenges. The goal was to navigate through the board and reach the Sky Castle first. At first, everything was lighthearted. We laughed as we navigated through silly obstacles like the Rainbow Swamp and the floating clouds. But as we progressed, something strange began to happen. The room grew colder, and the cheerful music on the game's old record player seemed to warp and distort. The dice rolls felt off, and the game pieces moved on their own accord, often landing us on spaces that sent us back to the start. We laughed nervously, thinking it was just a poorly designed game. But then, Jenna landed on a space marked The Dark Descent. Suddenly, the room's lights flickered, and the cheerful donkey on the board seemed to scowl. The temperature dropped even further, and a chilling draft swept through the room. Jenna went to the kitchen to get some snacks, but she never returned. Mark and Lucy went to look for her, but they found nothing. No sign of Jenna, just an empty, dark kitchen. We searched the house frantically, but Jenna was gone. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. We returned to the living room, desperate to understand what was happening. The game board had changed. The spaces were now marked with ominous symbols, and the cheerful donkey had transformed into a sinister, grinning creature. The instructions on the board had changed too. To escape, reach the sky castle, or face the curse. Panic set in. Mark and Lucy wanted to abandon the game, but I insisted we finish it, hoping it might undo whatever had happened. We played on, but the game seemed to fight us. Every roll of the dice sent us backward. Every attempt to reach the sky castle met with new, terrifying obstacles. Shadows danced on the walls, and the room grew colder with every move. Finally, as we neared the end, the board's darkness seemed to close in on us. The grinning donkey on the board seemed to mock our efforts. I could hear Jenna's faint, desperate cries coming from somewhere, but I couldn't tell where. Mark and Lucy were frozen in fear, their eyes wide with terror. When I finally rolled the dice to land on the final space, the game board erupted in a blinding light. I felt a force pulling me, dragging me toward the board. The room spun, and for a moment I thought I would be sucked into the game itself. Then everything stopped. The board fell silent, the lights returned to normal, and the game was back to its original state. Jenna was still missing, and Mark and Lucy were in a state of shock. We never found Jenna again, and after that night, we couldn't bring ourselves to touch the game. To this day, I keep the Donkey Flight board locked away in the attic, untouched. I don't know what happened to Jenna or why the game changed, but every so often I hear strange noises coming from the attic, a faint, eerie whistling, as if a donkey is flying through the darkness. My name is Sam, and if you ever come across a game called Donkey Flight, do yourself a favor and leave it alone. Some games are better left forgotten, and some flights should never be taken.